Hello everyone, what is happening? I'm your host Ayman Hassan and welcome back to another video here at Most Amazing Top 10. Now I don't particularly enjoy things like hunting, granted I've never tried it, but I know myself and I know I personally wouldn't enjoy it even if I did. I have camped before though and that's fun, I do like doing that. But the woods are not always a friendly place, let's face it, there are dangerous creatures in there and at times there are dangerous people in there as well. Most hunters are usually alone when they go and you know how the saying goes, did you really scream if no one was around to hear it? I know I made that up and the original saying is about a tree, but whatever, moving on. Before getting into the video guys, 1. Subscribe to Top 10, 2. Subscribe to Top 10 Hindi, 3. Let's start this video, and 4. This is the top 10 scary hunting stories. Starting us off with number 10 is The Stalker. This one is a story from Robert Sherman who submitted his story to the YouTube channel Mr. Nightmare. Robert decided to take his 10-year-old son Peter out hunting and it was a bit boring to begin with. There was more waiting than usual and he could tell that Peter was getting bored out of his mind. Robert decided to move them to a different location and on their walk he heard footsteps ahead and then saw the head of a man appear out of the foliage. He gave the man an apologetic wave and the man went back into the foliage. Now the man didn't seem like a hunter and his face alone was quite off-putting, and seeing someone this far into the woods just seemed very out of the blue. So they decided to go the other way just out of safety. A while later, with no sign of any deers around, they decided to sit down and have lunch and they again heard some more footsteps. Robert's heart literally dropped when he again saw the same man from before staring at them from behind a tree. Now Robert was about to confront the man when he reconsidered and decided it's just better if they both just left. When they nearly got to the car, he heard a twig snap behind them and he turned around to see the same man, and when he started walking towards him with his rifle, the man disappeared into the woods and Robert heard a thud, and when he got there he saw a severed head. He called the police and reported what happened, and he found out from his wife that 2 hunters had actually disappeared in the area. So whoever the hell they encountered in the woods was about to make Peter and Robert his next victims. Can we just talk about the severed head? It just made an appearance and then it never was talked about in the story again. Like, what about the head, people? Coming in at number 9 is The Man Outside. This story was shared by Redditor Glithium, who said that around 20 years ago him and his girlfriend went on their first overnight backpacking trip. They hiked up a mountain next to Tucson that also had a pool of water near it. First of all, did anyone think it was Tucson until the Chainsmokers song came out? Because I certainly did. They had a romantic hike up, everything was going fine and dandy, and then nightfall came and everything went wrong. Okay, no, I'm kidding, not everything went wrong, but some things did go wrong. During the night when they were asleep, they were awoken by the sound of some grunting. When they looked, they saw a shadow circling their campsite over and over again whilst grunting. The shadow, as they saw, was clearly a man, and they assumed by his actions he wasn't in his right mind. Great. Up a mountain, in a tent, in the dead of night, with a mentally unstable man, what could possibly go wrong? The man did this on and off all night whilst occasionally jumping in the watering hole and screaming. The pair didn't make a sound, and by the morning the man had disappeared. At number 8 we have the gunshot. Now in 2012 a few friends decided to go camping after a hunting trip and they ended up setting up camp in Northern California. On the way back from the site they set up camp a few miles south of a tiny town as night was approaching and they didn't want to be on the move again until morning. The town next to them was quite tiny. It had one road, a bar, a post office and a gas station. That's literally it. But in the middle of the night the friends started hearing screaming in the distance. They heard 3 voices arguing but they were too far to actually hear what was being said. Then all of a sudden they heard 1 gunshot and then nothing but silence. The friends didn't say a word and tried their best to sleep, but as you can imagine none of them did. They decided not to report the incident to the police, and you're probably wondering why. There's only 1 sheriff that patrolled those 3 counties, and if you've watched Sons of Anarchy at all, the show is based on this area of California. And yes, the show is dramatized, but it's not entirely based on fiction. The kids thought that the sheriff would most likely be in with these people, and with no resources or anything, it would have been really easy to make them disappear next if they wanted. What a spooky thought. Filling our number 7 slot is The Braided Woman. Now this story was submitted by a person with the username Russia. He decided to take his girlfriend hunting but reckoned they could go hiking as well, since his girlfriend didn't seem too thrilled about the hunting part. As they were on this off-trail hike, they were on a really steep climb going towards a rock overhang that looked over the ocean and cliffs and was, just a romantic spot for the lovebirds. As it came into view, they noticed this old lady already sitting there seemingly sketching something in her sketch pad. By the way, first red flag, how can an old lady hike up this very steep hill? I mean, questions. I'm not saying that old ladies can't do it, but it would have been a struggle. But anyway, by the time they finally made it to the top, the woman finally turned around to look at them, and it wasn't a woman at all. It was this insane looking man with a crazed look on his face who was wearing a dress and had put his hair into small braids and tied them with rubber bands. Now, just to preface this, the user specifically clarified it wasn't a trans person or someone in transition, nothing like that. The man looked like an escaped convict psychopath. The couple said hello to him in order to be friendly, and he did nothing but stare at them until they left. Now, I don't know about you, but that is not my idea of a romantic hike with my girlfriend or boyfriend. Now at number 6 is the cougar, not the woman kind, the animal kind. Relax, you crazies. This story comes from Reddit user Benedictus, great username by the way. When he had just started learning how to hunt, he went into this canyon in the mountains with his brother to try and hunt some elk with bows. With bows, that's some sort of Lord of the Rings type thing. But anyway, the brothers had radio so they could talk to each other, and there was an area in the canyon where foliage opened up a few hundred yards below the user. Now his brother was down by the foliage and he was matching him from above. When his brother exited the foliage, his heart literally stopped. Something else exited the foliage after his brother, but he couldn't quite see what it was, so he got out his rangefinder and zoomed in. It was a cougar in a stalking stance following his brother. Before he even knew what was happening, he quickly radioed his brother, telling him not to move because the cougar was following him. The cougar seemed to watch him for what seemed like forever, and then eventually turned around and left. Just imagine that. The brother couldn't even hear or sense this massive animal was right behind him. They're so silent, it's insane. That's Mother Nature for you, and natural selection. I mean, if his brother wasn't looking, he would have been, you know. Coming in at number 5 is the bear den. Now this one's from Reddit user The Hunting Gear Guy, who went hunting for elk in northern Alberta one day. He got dropped off in a nice spot and found a clearing in the middle of the brush and set up there. The area he was camped out in smelled quite bad, but he just assumed it was swamp gas or something. As the sun started rising, the man gave a few calls but heard nothing back. When it became full daylight, he actually looked around him for the first time and saw that there were moose skulls and bones literally everywhere, and a fresh kill only 20 yards behind him. So unbeknown to this guy, he was actually smack dab in the middle of a bear's den and had been for around 3 hours. As you can probably assume, he ran back to the road and sat there for 2 hours not wanting to be bear food, and honestly, you can't blame him. At number 4 is the camouflage. Now this was shared by an anon with the user JHFK, which I'm assuming was made in a random keyboard smash. But anyway, the user and their friends used to spend summers bouldering in an area an hour and a half from where they used to live. It was a place near these woods where a lot of people would hunt as well, including the user themselves. They had camped in the woods after hunting many times, and the 4th time they went, their friend had left her gear outside her tent, and the next morning some of her things were missing. Her boots, a few clothes, things like that. The friends thought she must have lost them or misplaced them, or maybe they just fell out of her bag, or maybe even some animals took them, who knows. A year passed and the friends went on another bouldering and hunting trip. They were eating by their tents with the only light being a fire. One of them goes out of the campsite slightly and sees a man in a full-on ghillie suit lying belly down on the ground just staring at their campsite. Now camo suit is one thing, but a ghillie suit is like 8 times more intense. That's when the person literally looks like foliage or sand or whatever they're trying to blend in with. When he realized he had been spotted, the guy just got up and ran. The friends never returned to the site since then, and I'm glad. What was that guy doing? Instead of being camouflaged to hunt animals, he was camouflaged to steal from campers. I'm confused. Either way, it's very creepy. Filling our number 3 slot is the Ghost Man. I'm loving these titles. Honestly, I know that's a self-plug, but I don't even care. But anyway, this one was shared by Redditor DHLucky13, who claimed something really spooky happened to him one day whilst hunting. The user lives in the middle of nowhere, and thus when they hunt, they also do it in the middle of nowhere, and no one lives anywhere within a few miles of them. The user set up their camera in the middle of the field while hunting and set it to taking a 3-shot burst. And each picture, as you guys probably know, are taken half a second apart, which is basically no time at all. In one of the user's 3-shot bursts, the first image was just the field, in the second image there was a man standing in the field on the tree line, and in the third image, he was nowhere to be found. Where could that man have gone in the half a second? People, riddle me that. I need answers. Now at number 2 is the tapping, and this was shared by an anonymous person with the handle Shadow Handler. Now he went on a hunting trip with his friend in the Idaho wilderness, and at night they were staying at his dad's remote cabin. Already you know something messed up is gonna happen if the story involves a remote cabin. Nothing good has ever happened at a remote cabin, I'm telling you that right now. The nearest town to them was around 50 miles away, and the nearest active road was 2 miles away, so the possibility of someone reaching them or being around them was pretty damn slim. Now I need some insanely creepy music to help me out here. At around midnight, both men tried to sleep when they heard something scrape at the door. Then one of them goes, "Did you hear something?" To which the other said, "Yeah." Then in their remote cabin, in the middle of nowhere, someone starts knocking on their door. Not saying a single word, just knocking. The men, both in their 30s mind you, were terrified. They didn't leave the cabin until morning, and they found nothing that could have fallen against the door and no animal tracks leading away from the cabin either. Who the hell, or what the hell, was knocking on their door at midnight? And finally at number 1 is the murder scene. Yes guys, I can find a murder scene story linking to about any topic or scenario given to me. This story comes from Redditor user Tap Them Out. He was deer hunting in northern Georgia and had arrived at around 4 AM to scout the area and follow a game trail he had found. He followed a game trail where a few trails started converging and set up inside an area with rock and vegetation. He waited and waited, and as the sun started rising, he took in his surroundings for the first time. He saw yellow tape on the floor in a few places, but it was covered in mud, so he didn't really pay it any mind. Then he saw some paint on the floor as well. Weird, but again, no red flags. But by 8 AM he had seen no movement of any deer, so he decided to move further in. That's when he realized he was sitting in a place that was sort of built as a cabin or fort of some kind. He ended up walking to a road that was about 100 meters away from him, and he saw a pile of stuffed animals that looked disgusting. They were wet, muddy, and most likely rotting. Above the animals there was a sign which read as a memorial sign for a child that had been murdered in the forest he was hunting in. And then everything came together. The tape was police line tape, and the paint was probably signifying the position of the body. I wasn't able to access the link to the homicide the user provided, but he did find the case he stumbled upon, so it is 100% legitimate. How scary is that? Imagine you're going hunting and you find a homicide crime scene. I'd poop myself. I'd run away. And that's it for today's video guys. I hope you enjoyed all these stories. I actually really did. Reading these, I always put myself in the position of these people and imagine what I would have done had it been me, and I always come to the same conclusion. I would have pissed myself and ran in about 90% of these stories. Let me know in the comments below which story scared you the most, and also share any scary hunting stories of your own if you have any. As always, I'm your host Ayman Hassan, and I'll see you next time. Bye!